Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marco Giannitrapani. I'm looking after data analytics, AI, and marketing platform for Novartis International. Pleasure to be here. We thought about having a session which looks after the space we're operating in, which is really focusing on customer engagement, where by customer we mean healthcare professionals, patients, anyone who serves as an organization. In order to do that, what I thought about sharing is what we think and how we are approaching this space, which is focused on three key strategic pillars. And the orchestration of these three strategic pillars we take very seriously, and is something not easy. We almost take as an analogy playing and delivering a perfect symphony to our customer. And by playing a perfect symphony, it means that you need to orchestrate very well each one of the three individually, but also across them. If you allow me the analogy, the first element that we need to focus on to deliver a perfect symphony are the nodes, right? And which is the data. Data, again, is the raw materials, if you want, is really the basis of everything we do. And there are two aspects I want to focus on, maybe in sharing my thoughts later in this presentation. One is about thinking about data as an enterprise asset. It's an intangible asset, but it's an asset. Anything we do have in an organization, such as our buildings, our stocks, assets, but data is as equally important as that. And second of all, it's about the governance around the data. If we truly believe about the value of it, what's the governance model we follow? Once again, in order to continue and deliver the perfect symphony, the next things you need are the instruments or the transactional systems. And that's what we call it digital and tech. The two aspects I want to double click on in these slides eventually are going to be, one is the user-centric approach we're following, and the second one, which is about thinking how the digital solution not just enable the processes, but they're actually transforming the processes. And the last piece is going to be about, I cannot conclude it without talking about Gen AI, about AI and analytics. And these are really the scripts, right? If you do have the nodes, if you do have the instruments, what AI brings to you are really the composition, is the notes that is playing finally the symphony that we are looking for. Two aspects of this. One has to be valuable and actionable. We don't do AI just for the sake of doing AI, but we do for delivering value. And that's to be applied to real life business problem, to what our customer really needs, and to make sure that we deliver value to our customers. So starting with the data, right? As I was saying, two aspects of it. The first one is about the enterprise assets. Thinking about data, we really need to look about holistically from the full life cycle, from the data acquisition all the way to the transformation to the consumption of data. And one thing, it's no secret to anyone, is the huge value that healthcare data has got. If today I go myself on the dark web and I sell something about me, the most valuable thing they want to buy from me is healthcare data. That's the highest and most paid data that I can sell about me. The second highest value is only 4 times less than that, and it's my social security number. But it's not just the value of it, it's also the cost of it. It's also the cost of doing business with data. And I think it's no secret to anyone about the latest regulation. This can go to a significant amount of percentage of our income if we do not manage the data properly. It could be about 3 to 4% of our annual revenue if we do not manage properly. So this could be a significant amount of cost which has to be taken into account whenever you look at your data. I was talking about the asset principle about the data, how then you govern it. If you really think it's got huge value and a significant amount of cost implication of it, how do you govern? And I'd like to bring the attention or the analogy on our governmental structure that all of us live in. Each one is different, but when you think about data democratization, you always think, or most of us think about giving access to a data. Let's give access, that's data democratization. True, but that's one of the two dimensions. You need definitely high data governance as well. If you only give high access but no governance, it's actually not data democracy, it's a data anarchy. There is no regulation and everyone can do whatever they want. On the other end, experience, many of us, I believe, if you have too much of a governance but no access, you don't share your data, that's where you end up with data dictatorship eventually. So the last thing to share on data before moving on into the digital platform is about really what we are doing on top of that, which is making sure that our data is AI ready. Everything we do with data is for a purpose, and today what we're trying to build is to make sure that our data is consumable by AI and Gen AI engine that we're building. And again, the analogy that we're bringing here is that if data is the body, Eventually, all that is driving a lot of the value of it is our brain, which is the semantics. Semantics is really now what is connecting the data, what is making the data delivering the value through a lot of the Gen AI solution that we're building. And finally, once again, the quality of the data is how we check our vitals. How do we check that our body is doing okay? Quality check has to be in place to make sure that either we don't provide false information to our enterprise and to our customer, but we also deliver the highest level of value to them. Next is about digital and tech. As I was saying, these are the transactional systems. These are the instruments that we're playing with. The first element is about the user-centric. Where are our users today? We need to go there, we need to serve our user, and we need to make sure that we provide the right information. We have the right transactional solutions to engage with them. And if you look at some of the latest number that we got, at least in our team, and we're looking at, if you still look at the evolution of the engagement with our healthcare professional, and this is data post-COVID, because before COVID was even higher, there has been a significant reduction of face-to-face engagement. A lot more digital engagement is becoming the normal now. And if you look at also the trustability of the source, so not just what channel, but also how good is the quality of the data. A lot of physicians and healthcare professionals, they really look after and ensuring that we do have proper validated sources. A lot of the complaints is about that there is too much available on the web. We as patients also, that's the first thing we do. How much is the quality of the data out there is the question. And last but not least is, of course, everything that we know about the searchability. Where are our customers going whenever they seek information? Of course, Google is still the place to go with over 5 trillion yearly search, but it's no secret to anyone that there is a lot of Gen AI engine optimization, which are becoming more and more frequent to our days and becoming the place to go for a lot of our customers. So that's about digital and tech. It's about the user-centric, but also about process transformation. I thought I wanted to share maybe with you and just to also hear your thoughts if you have anything. It's about how do we deliver the value through data? What's the vision? A lot of us start with a strategy. I will invite us to think about what's the vision, what's the step before? And the way we see is twofold. You have an approach where you really deliver value through your solutions by growing up or linear way, if you want, upwards of existing solution. And you can do that in two ways. Either your value increasing or optimizing. By increasing, what we mean is that you have an existing solution and you leverage data, you leverage AI to give more value to the existing solution. Real world data is an example of that, for example, right? You generate more evidence, more scientific evidence to something you already have, or you optimize. You make the solutions you have with cheaper, you make it faster, you make it leaner, you want to optimize your costs. And that's one approach that you can follow. The different approach is actually you don't grow, you just totally transform your processes. And you take it holistically in your approach. And again, for those of you who work in the healthcare sector, it's super exciting to see how AI and Gen AI can really discover new medicine. So totally transforming your business and taking a totally different approach compared to the classical ones. So that's value creation, but there is also value addition. That's also what we mean by adding, for example, all the wearable information that you do have. You can provide, and you can definitely add more solution to your existing solution through patients' additional services or healthcare professional additional services. So it's really about the vision that you want to set that really needs to drive eventually your strategies. Do you want to grow your solution or do you want to transform your solutions? I was mentioning about digital, I was mentioning about data. The last, and I'm going to try to not to spend too much time on that, it's about analytics and Gen AI. And it's all about valuable and actionable, as I was mentioning before, but it's also about real life, right? Now, what we mean by that is really, and for those of you who have been around in the data science space for quite some time, have observed on how data science was really sitting in a box and was really sometimes a function, sometimes a department, which was very techy, sometimes in the garage, sitting and doing their own thing. The really transformation that is currently being observed is how data science is becoming more and more integrated with functions. So how it is embedded in medical, in marketing, in supply chain, in research, across all the functions. But the other thing is how it is embedded also across different levels. How do you ensure that data science doesn't sit just with the doers, doesn't sit just with the analyst, but it sits also with the executive. And whenever there is a decision-making process at the executive level, data science capability is also there. But then another thing that has been observed in the data science space is that sometimes data science was seen as something separate in the technical space and not really connecting with a wider healthcare domain. And that's where there is a missed opportunity also here. Because the healthcare systems, no secret to any of us, is very complex. Especially for an organization like ours, which is multinational, going over 100 plus countries. The healthcare system is extremely complicated across the different countries. And there are a lot of variability and a lot of dynamic. It's changing as we speak. So you need to be up to date with all the regulation and all the data and all the technology changes that is happening across a variety of countries and a variety of therapeutic areas. So ensuring that you unbox your AI and your data science, you connect through functions, you connect through your healthcare domains across different countries, it's a must for us. So the last one and the last part of the slides before moving on into conclusions and opening up for questions is about actually what I personally believe the challenge, but also the opportunity for those that work in AI in an enterprise set. And that I'm personally very curious about this because I don't think it's a data science, it's actually a data art. And by that I mean that there is a polarity that we need to navigate. There is not a perfect answer, there is not a secret. It could be both right, it could be both wrong. And that polarity is really across a variety of dimensions. The first reflection is about how do you manage the polarity between personalization and standardization. Of course you want to deliver, and the previous presentation was a perfect example of that. You want to make sure that you do have everything super personalized to your customer, being a doctor, being a patient, and so on. But you can achieve that in Absurd only if you standardize things, right? Only if you have your data standardized, your governance standardized, and so on. So how do you manage that polarity? The second is about how much accuracy and complexity do you want to achieve? The most complex and perfect solution, they are not easy. They are complex, sometimes they're described as black box, and it's difficult to explain. So as soon as then you need to use it in real life, that's where you have a challenge, because people in your organization, they will not believe in you because you're not able to explain properly. So how do you manage something to be super accurate and super complex? On the other end, you want to make sure you can explain and it's easy to be explained, right? How do you manage that polarity? The second, also previous presentation, they were touching that topic. How do you manage the polarity between privacy and transparency? In healthcare, like in any other sector, you really can achieve most of your value as soon as you're able to pull as much data as possible together. That in our domain is not that easy. You've got a lot of privacy regulation for healthcare data, which is one of the most stringent environment we work in. And that it's a bit of a prevention that you want to make sure you have in place. How do you manage that polarity once again? For interoperability versus agility. By that what we mean is that the way to make sure that you keep up to speed and you keep up to pace with everything which is evolving is that you have something which is almost a plug and play option. You can unplug, you can play, you can change absolutely in a very dynamic way. Nice to say, but as soon as you want to make sure that that's available, that's difficult to connect across the different functions. One of the challenges we do have in healthcare is how to ensure that a company like Novartis, we do connect everything from research, development, supply chain, commercial, medical, all the functions. And if you want to have that interoperability, you have to make sure that things are done in a proper way. And as soon as you touch one element of it, you need to reconsider everything. So once again, the complexity of managing the agility versus interoperability. And last but not least, one of the things I'm very passionate about, as soon as we need to bring to life our solutions, the polarity between how much fairness and unbiased of our AI solution, which is really what we want from our AI solution. We want data-driven recommendation. We want recommendation which are unbiased, but how much you can do that if you do not incorporate also the business insights. For any application we do, you want to leverage and you want to make sure you do have all the insights coming from the experts, coming from your medical, from your marketing teams, from your supply chain experts. How do you incorporate that without removing the bias and the full data-driven solution and approach that you do have through your solutions?